Hello, everyone. Roger here on the 23rd of June. And the second part of this two-part Hangout season, which is looking at empathy, what it means, how you use those tools and techniques to build better connections to your world, whether that's your family, your neighborhood, your community, your colleagues in the workplace, or crucially, your customers and your clients too. I always like to start these things with quotes or stats or something. So let's kick off with something from Daniel Goleman. Daniel Goleman is the fella who wrote about emotional quotients as opposed to intelligence quotients, EQ, as opposed to IQ. And what Daniel Goleman was saying was that in this high IQ job pool where we currently find ourselves, where it's about intelligence and project planning abilities and other hard skills, it's great to have soft skills like empathy because they mark us out as individual candidates who are outstanding, a bit different from all the rest, which makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because project planning and other really solid process-driven skills or competencies, they're one thing. You can put a team together, of course. You can have a project plan to reach a particular outcome. But can you motivate those individuals in the team? Can you engage with them? Can you build the kind of rapport with them that makes achieve great results, to have flexibility, a bit of humor, a bit of learning, all the rest of it? Can you be an authentic presence whilst you're delivering all of this and establish your leadership as the kind of attractive and engaging leadership that makes people want to come and work for you, not just in the organization, but in your particular team? And if you've got those attributes during the day, during your 9 to 5, how powerful are they? Because you can take them out into the world beyond the 9 to 5. If you're doing stuff in the evening where you're volunteering or working on sort of social projects or whatever, you can use those same skills there. And when you get home to your family, you're still using them. You're still building rapport. You're still connecting. You're still making powerful use of the warmth, the openness, the ability to learn, all those forward-facing, outward-facing attributes that make you someone who's attractive and interesting and approachable. So that's kind of an agreeable skill set to have. It makes you feel like someone who's not hidebound or rule-bound, but somebody who is welcoming and someone who has something more to offer than command and control leadership. So as we go forward into the 21st century, those are exactly the sorts of skills that are going to be very valuable and useful too, as Daniel Goleman is suggesting there. So let's take a step back and just review briefly last time around what we were talking about, which is developing an understanding of other people's frame of reference. We all look at the world from our own perspective outwards, and that's based on our skills, on our previous life experiences, our personal stories, our value set, and generally speaking, how we face up to trials, tribulations, challenges, as well as the easier days when everything's flowing smoothly forward. So if we're able to understand where we're coming from, that's self-awareness, and if we're able to act authentically in a way that lines up our inner world with the world that we find outside of ourselves, I think we're going quite some ways to using empathy in strategic and valuable ways, both in our immediate world around us, with colleagues and supervisors, big bosses, within our organization or our team, and beyond that, importantly, to the clients, customers, stakeholders, our tribe, the people who are interested in what we're doing. So I was thinking about how to go into some greater depth with you and offer a couple of models of how this works out really well and what it looks like when this doesn't work out so well. And of course, I was going to share some insights from coaching clients and all the rest of it. And then something happened that I just have to share with you now because it perfectly epitomizes how empathy can work really well. And I'll contrast it to how it's worked less well in my experience previously. But first of all, let's share the first story. Now, imagine, if you will, the need to be in Nottingham for 4 p.m. for a meeting and having a choice of two modes of travel. Either a coach, which is inexpensive but takes a little bit longer to get there and involves a motorway journey, and accidents and collisions happen on motorways, so maybe that's not such a good way to go, versus the railway, which is, yes, more expensive but quicker, and you hardly ever hear of anything going wrong with rail transportation, don't you? So I chose the rail, and of course the only time that this will ever happen was the time I needed to be at the destination by 3 o'clock for a 4 o'clock appointment. There was a fire by the trackside. Turns out that the emergency services fight fires from every direction they can get access. So they get onto the track, which means you have to shut off the overhead current and you have to stop the trains running. So they're busy fighting the fire and I'm busy going nowhere. So there's no chance I'm going to be where I need to be for 3 o'clock with time enough for a coffee and a sandwich before the 4 o'clock meeting. Empathy came into play right there and then. I was able to ring up the people with whom I was meeting, explain the situation. They were very sympathetic. They recognized that it was a 1 in a million chance that this would happen and rearrange things for another day, another time, another location. Brilliant. That still left the journey back down to London, of course, which was now going to be coming into London at rush hour with everything that entails of a packed train coming back down and all the hassles that go with that. So I got back to London, not quite steam coming out the ears, just frustrated and all the rest of it. It's not the fault of the rail company. It's just one of those things. But as I got off the train, there on the platform were the rail company staff with the badges, etc., with free water, which is nice, a nice touch to calm you down when there's not quite steam coming out of your ears, but also with information about how to claim compensation, which was something I hadn't even thought about. It wasn't their fault, the rail company's fault, that the train journey had been grim, full of delays, full of stress, full of strain. But they have an empathic relationship to their customers, clearly. It's going to cost them many thousands of pounds to offer compensation and free bottles of water, but they understood first that after a frustrating and stressy day, you probably do need something by way of a sympathetic face and all the rest of it. So a bottle of water, it doesn't maybe cost a fortune, but it's something, and it says, sorry, you've had a hard day. And second, for those people who wanted it, here's the information about compensation. They don't, of course, have anything to do with fires and fighting them, but they do recognize, they said the service would get us all to our destination at a particular time. That didn't happen, and they accept the responsibility for offering a gesture of compensation. Not everybody wanted it. There were people sort of saying, no thanks. But it's really nice to think that here's a service provider who absolutely understands how empathy in practice is good business, aside from anything else. It says, here's a company that is willing to go the extra yard, the extra mile. Here's a company that puts cash up front. Basically, they're offering compensation. And here's a company that's interested in reputational management too. We are all potentially advocates for that particular brand, and we could give one of two reports. Tell all our friends, they didn't offer us anything. They were really offhand and a bit dismissive of us. Or, no, actually, they did something really good and a little bit something extra as well. So that was the opinion that I certainly took away from them. And it's one that I'm happy to share with you now by way of an example. Empathy in practice is about understanding where somebody else is coming from, their frame of reference, and putting yourself into it. Just sharing a little bit of what they might be feeling, testing the water in case you're wrong. You might very well be wrong. But if you're unhappy, there's something that you can do to step a little bit towards somebody else and just diffuse a potentially aggravating or annoying situation. And I did see people who were annoyed on the train by the delay, sort of with all the evidence of stress and strain showing on their faces, in their voices, and the way they were interacting with other people. So any little gesture or big gesture that you can take to demonstrate an empathic response particularly well. It shows you're agreeable, it shows you're open and honest. It shows that you're a bit of an extrovert, actually. You're not sort of shrinking away from a difficult situation. You're facing up to it and dealing with it within the confines or the rules or the regs that apply to where you are. But it represents you well, it represents your team well, and your organization well as in addition. So that's an example of empathy in action where it all works quite nicely. And those are some takeaways for you in terms of tools or techniques. Check out the situation. There's lots of clues on offer. The way people look, the way their faces are set, tone of voice, the way they are abrupt or apologetic or whatever. Those are some clues there. And you can ask some open questions. How are you doing? I know there's been a delay. Is there anything I can do? Those sorts of things. It's something of an apology, but it's certainly a human thing to do. And the opposite situation, well, let me tell you about the opposite situation rather than touching on it. Imagine you had a relationship with another service provider that was ongoing year on year, nothing much changed. But then for various reasons, in the middle of the year, over the summer, you ended the relationship because you'd forgotten to review all the different connections that came out of that relationship. You paid that former service provider some money just after Christmas because it was a standing order you'd forgotten to cancel. When you recognized shortly after the money had paid out that money had gone out in error, you contact the service provider and you say, hey, as you know, contract was terminated over the summer, last summer. As you can see from your records, on this date in January, £80, $80, €80 was paid out to you in error because there is no contract. So if you can look at that date, that amount of money, and this reference number for the account details, you can see you've got some money that you shouldn't have. If you could just confirm that off of your finance systems and reimburse your former contractee, that would be brilliant. Thanks very much. Now, an organization, of course, that would be diligent, would do its checking on its records, would confirm that that was an error that had been made, and would reimburse the money. So what would you make of an organization that said, right, so you've contacted us about some money you claim to be owed. We're not really set up to investigate these sorts of things. So if you give us £75, or about 93–94% of what is owed, we'll use that as an administration charge to investigate your claim and reimburse you if we feel that's appropriate. But unless you do that, we'll do nothing, and there's no further discussion of this. So as you can see, and this is a real life example, this is something that happened. As you can see, not every organization has at its core an empathic set of values. Some organizations simply don't get it. They'll apply a rigid set of rules very much in their favor. Yes, there may be some compensation due to you, but it'll cost you pretty much all of the compensation as an admin fee to make that repayment possible. And we're not going to discuss it. So from the first example, there's a model of an organization which gets it, that the relationship to customers is really important. Reputation is even more so. And if there is something that can be done that demonstrates an empathic response, we understand what you're going through. Sorry about that. Let's see if there's something we can do by way of a gesture or a step towards you. That's great. That's model A. Model B is quite the reverse. This is our situation. This is how we operate. you are nothing to do with us almost, even though you were formerly part of in a relationship with us. You're not in that state anymore, and we don't care. So I think there is actually a relationship between care and empathy. With an empathic relationship, even if someone's not immediately close to you, not part of your immediate circle or family or what have you, they still have a relationship to you. It might be a very, very distant one. They're not even current clients or stakeholders or customers. They're people who are vaguely aware of you. But if you manage it right, you can manage that arm's length relationship in such a way that the relationship brings that person a little bit closer to you, or you step closer to them, whichever way you want to look at it. But the gap between you narrows because of the warmth, the empathic nature of what you're doing. You're demonstrating that you get them, you understand what their pain point or their problem or their challenge might be, and you're willing to take a step towards them and bring them a bit closer to you as a way of tackling that pain, addressing that problem, meeting that challenge. The Model B example, where the organization was basically hands off and nothing to do with us, unless you make it, unless there's a payment involved, in which case we'll maybe look into your situation. The Model B is maybe how bad businesses operate. They don't care about their reputation because obviously, why would you praise to the skies an organization that is very dismissive, abrupt, and presents itself in such a way? And also, they don't care. Excuse me. Also, they don't care about how they might be perceived by people just on the periphery of their world, because as well as recommending a good example of how business operates, you can do the opposite. You can kind of be unfavorable about them and not push people in their direction, or just say, oh, I know about this really great experience you could potentially have, because all of your feedback is going to be negative. It's going to be based on real life, but it really is going to be negative. So when you're thinking about using these tools and techniques of empathy in your everyday 9 to 5 or beyond, you're actually in a very strong position if you think outside the box, to use the cliche. When you're directly relating to someone, because they're part of your family, part of your neighborhood, part of your colleague structure, or part of your client base, you're dealing with known quantities, people whose expectations you can kind of make a guess about, whose experiences previously you can actually look up. If you've got a database of previous clients or what have you, you can track how concerns have been dealt with, whether they were happy or not so much, and what you might want to do next. But where you're dealing with people that you haven't met yet, who are on the periphery, perhaps people who follow you on social media, who are aware of you by name or reputation or what have you. And by you, I mean the organization or the team you lead or you are a part of, or you yourself, if you're a named individual. Those people are people you can charm. Those are the folks you can bring on side. You can engage with them. You can offer them content or information that's of value to them because you really understand where they're coming from, what they're likely to want right now or next week or next month. And by doing that bit of due diligence, just understanding where they're coming from and what their world looks like and their frame of reference, you can demonstrate yourself as outstanding. This takes us all the way back to that conversation Daniel Goleman was initiating right at the beginning of the Hangout, where he's talking about being outstanding by using the soft skills. They know, of course, that your team does things to the letter on time because of project planning and all the rest of it. But what other valuable content can you put out there that reflects ever so well about the way your team is flexible, the way your team learns, the way your team uses the learning that it's built up about current issues in the market, current concerns for customers, upcoming changes that might affect customer expectations, etc. or even very live and current events that might change completely the customer experience. And there I'm talking about the rail company recognizing that in real time during the day things have gone wrong and tasking staff to be at the platform, on the platform at the station when people come back with steam coming out of their ears, with water to calm the steam down, and with compensation vouchers to make everything seem a little less fraught. That's the outstanding beauty of flexible and empathic responses. Organizations and teams and individuals and leaders who get it can do that sort of work in real time on the day and make the experience of stressed out, angry, or hostile individuals completely change by relatively small tweaks, just to make it clear that we understand what you're going through, we're sorry, and here's something that steps us towards you, that makes the gap a little bit smaller and takes the sting out of that potential for confrontation, hostility, or anger. So that's the model A behavior, which I would suggest in terms of tools or techniques or takeaways you adopt. Equally, there's a lot of information in this Hangout, I appreciate. Why not record it, check the recording even after it's concluded, come back with paper and pen and just highlight the bits with which you agree, that you disagree with. That's what the comments section below is all about. You can offer your views, what works for you when you think about empathy, and what are the tools and techniques that you use to demonstrate that you understand where somebody else is coming from, whether that person's a family member or a colleague or a customer. How do you take the sting out of a situation, and how do you de-escalate something that has the potential to fester, to become a real nagging problem, and something that, because we are interconnected in so many ways these days, has the potential to leap up and bite you on the neck at some point down the road. Because think about it. In the first situation I was describing, if the rail company did nothing at all to just reflect the fact that people have had a bad day using their service, the reputational damage be? If people then went on to Twitter, say, and tweeted about this blimmin' awful situation and how they were ignored, that nothing was evident during the journey, that the train company cared. As it was, there were announcements on the train from the train manager. There was the office even of water from the buffet for free whilst we were on the train. They actually made an unscheduled stop at a station so people could get out and walk around a bit, so as not to be stuck in the middle of nowhere, penned in on a train, yes, with aircon, but also on a particularly warm day. Not good. So they'd really thought it through. These were contingencies. I'm guessing they didn't just have spur of the moment decisions being made, but they had a contingency plan sitting around somewhere, what to do if this goes wrong. So again, that's another part of empathy, isn't it? It's not just responding to a situation as it arises in front of you. It's thinking through, as part of your risk strategy, wrong with our service delivery at each and every point. And if the situation does go wrong, what do we do? What contingencies have we built into the system? What power have we given to our key colleagues, the managers or the leaders, to take decisions as the situation unfolds? And how do we keep the communication going so that people know exactly what's occurring, exactly what we're doing to ameliorate the situation? And subsequently, how might we surprise them, delight them even, by offering something unexpected at the end of the day, which just says, yeah, we really get it. We know what you feel like when you've had a bad journey. That wasn't something we had planned. We can do to compensate. And equally, if you're in an organization that's closer to Model B, where it's nothing to do with us, Gov, how could you influence that organization to be a little bit better? To take a few steps towards the people who might be disadvantaged, who might, through just an oversight or whatever, be inconvenienced to the tune of $80, €80, 80 quid, and say to them, okay, we can see what's happened. We've checked our records. It didn't take us 2 minutes to do that. You've given us all the information that we need, and here's the reimbursement. It's not anything major from our point of view, but we recognize it makes a difference to you and your day. And equally, it represents us well to mention our service to. So it's reputational building for us. It's good customer relations. Looking forward, you might recommend one of your friends to use our service. So we want good customer relations anyway. And also, it takes you out of a jam. Again, not every organization gets it. Not every team is structured like that. Some leaders, in fact, prefer command and control, and they are much more strict about how the rules are followed. There isn't any leeway. There isn't any movement there. It's very much around, well, it's not even diligence, is it? It's following the letter rather than the spirit of how we serve our customers, how we show up, how we present ourselves. I think Model A, the transport company, is more authentic, more than name badges and train managers. They're people, and people like dealing with people. People like solving other people's problems because that's the way we're structured. We're social animals after all. Model B, company B, where it's rules, this is how we do things, and unless you can pay us 93, 94% of the compensation you're seeking, forget about it. I think that represents the organization very well, or the decision maker very well, or the sector itself. And sooner or later, if you do that often enough, your potential pool of clients or customers just keeps shrinking. Because if you treat people like that often enough, other people won't be attracted to your service. And the people who are presently using it will be busily looking for the exits because they'll get the feeling they aren't valued. They're just numbers on a spreadsheet or on an Excel table or what have you, or in a workbook. They're not individuals. They don't bring anything of value beyond the money they're paying in, and the service delivery might or might not be good. Who cares? You're a number. You're not a person. So we've looked at empathy from many different directions. In the first of the Hangouts, we looked at just the concept of it and what it might entail for you based on your story, your values, the way you show up, and the expectations you have of other people in your world. We looked at the frame through which we all look at the world based on those values, expectations, and story elements, as well as our psychology, the personal take we have on challenges, problems, opportunities, and risks. Through the course of this Hangout, we've gone a little bit deeper. Model A and Model B. Model A, full of empathy, full of warmth, quite agreeable. It takes an extrovert to make these sorts of decisions, to ask those sorts of questions, to listen carefully to the words that are said in the answers, as well as the tone and the overall body language. And in greater depth, we looked at the fact that empathy has 2 or more levels. There's the obvious, what's the problem, what's the pain level, but also underneath that is what sorts of attitudes or beliefs or values might be showing up, and how can we do something that is warm, agreeable, authentic, welcoming, a little bit, to take the heat out of the situation, to bring people closer together, and to achieve all those benefits to personal reputation, to team reputation, to organizational reputation. Those benefits that are simply achieved by a little bit of extra work on the empathy side. By contrast, we looked at the Model B, where empathy is nowhere on the agenda. It's simply not part of the organization's set of values or beliefs. And even if there was an individual within that organization who felt differently, would it be for her or for him to speak up, to say, we shouldn't do this. This isn't kind of the way that I want to operate. Because if the prevailing value system is we don't do that here, that individual who wants to do that, who thinks it's valuable, well, they've got a choice. They can stick around, or they can look for another opportunity elsewhere where their values and beliefs are much more to the fore. And in a previous conversation to do with self-awareness, that's sometimes the problem, isn't it? That the individual's in a situation, either a team or an organization, where their best self, their good self, doesn't have room to breathe. They would love to be engaged. They would love to be open and warm and authentic, but they're kind of straitjacketed by a command and control system that says, we don't do that here, you don't get to do that. So that they can't be as engaged or productive or as good a colleague as they would like to be, because their attributes and their strengths aren't welcome. And I think it's about 4 out of 10 workers in the UK who seem to be in that particular bind, because their values don't fit, because their supervisors won't allow them to, because the culture of the organization doesn't support them in being their best self. So there's very much a relationship between self-awareness, which we've talked about, empathy, which we are talking about, and authenticity, which is something that I'm going to go on to talk about in a pair of Hangouts in the very near future. So keep an eye out for details on that score. But let's bring this all together by way of a bit of a summary of tools, techniques, and takeaways for you. Empathy, when you practice it, has so many advantages. It's almost difficult to list them. For yourself, it's about well-being, really. You feel better helping other people out. We're programmed to help one another out. That's why we're social animals. You also feel less stress because you're being your best self, your good self, in terms of what you do and how you do it, as well as for whom. There's dividends in all directions in terms of your 9 to 5, with your colleagues, with your senior bosses and supervisors, with customers and clients. And then outside of the 9 to 5, anyone you interact with, really, whether that's your family, your neighbor, your local community, they're all getting a better result from you because you are warm, authentic, approachable, open. You learn. You can follow rules, but you know when to go outside of those where it produces a better result for everyone. Who wouldn't want to be friends with someone like that, to be led by someone like that? And who wouldn't want to be served in that customer-provider relationship? So there's feelings, and you're tuned into them because self-awareness is a part of what you do now. You've got the empathy down cold. Authenticity we'll go on to talk about. And because you've got that flexibility of dealing with people at different levels, on the obvious level, the way they present themselves, and you are interacting with them, you've also got the insight behind the scenes as to what value system they might be operating from, how their previous personal story or beliefs shows up, how their frame of reference relates to yours. All of that is valuable stuff. It's the skills, but I think they're really quite valuable. So let's not perhaps denigrate them by calling them soft skills. Let's call them other skills, as well as the practical ones of project planning or onboarding or dealing with difficult customers or whatever. It's an empathy thing. It's a relationship to authenticity on one hand, which we'll go on to talk about. And it's very much related to self-awareness, because you have to be self-aware. You have to know what's going on in your head, your heart, and your gut to be able to show up in an empathic way day after day, confidently, consistently, and in difficult, challenging circumstances too. As I say, that's a lot of content for you to get a hold of and quite a lot to pack into 30 minutes. So thanks for sticking with it. Do yourself a favor, look back at what I've said with paper and pen, stop it, pause it, highlight the bits that really work for you, as well as the things that kind of seem inconsistent or you'd want to discuss or challenge or ask some more questions about. Use the space down below to do just that. Or you can hit me up on Twitter, of course. I'm at RogerD_said. And I look forward to sharing some more insight with you in the very next Hangout session, which will be about authenticity. Thank you very much for watching through this one. Good luck on reviewing it and taking some actions as well, because it's always about the actions. That's what makes the difference. Knowledge is one thing, but putting it into practice, that's very much another. So as I say, good luck on doing that. And tune in next time for some more good content, which will help you experience your life in a richer, more vivid, and empathic way. Cheers.